The galaxy had always believed humanity was predictable. Not weak, at least not officially. But predictable. When threatened, humans negotiated. When provoked, humans issued warnings. When attacked, they gathered evidence, called meetings, and argued over responses. For nearly 2 centuries, that reputation had kept the peace. It had also convinced some species that humanity had forgotten how to be dangerous. That assumption would become the greatest mistake in galactic history. Far beyond the crowded trade routes and shining core worlds, on the distant edge of explored space, a lonely station drifted above a frozen planet. Officially, it was known as Kestrel Outpost 7. Most star maps barely acknowledged its existence. The station orbited a world of endless ice oceans and jagged crystal mountains that reflected the light of its pale blue sun like shattered glass. Nothing about the system appeared important. Which was exactly why it was important. Commander Elias Ward stood inside the observation deck, staring at the stars beyond the transparent alloy viewport. The silence felt wrong. For 20 years, he had trusted his instincts. And tonight, every instinct he possessed was screaming that something was watching them. Behind him, the station bustled with ordinary life. Miners finished their shifts. Scientists reviewed survey data. Children laughed as they raced through residential corridors. Families gathered for evening meals. A normal day. A peaceful day. The kind of day nobody remembers until it becomes the last one. A sharp chime broke the silence. Ward turned. A young sensor officer appeared on the deck's holographic display. "Commander, we've detected another anomaly." Ward frowned. "Same sector?" "Yes, sir." His stomach tightened. 3 days earlier, long-range scanners had detected an unidentified signal near the edge of the system. The signal had lasted only seconds before disappearing. Then it returned. Then vanished again. Every time they tried to track it, it slipped away. Almost as if someone was testing their defenses. Watching. Learning. Ward headed for the command center. The station's central operations room glowed with blue holographic displays and floating streams of data. Officers worked quietly at their stations. As he approached the tactical display, the anomaly appeared once more. A faint pulse. Barely visible. Yet undeniably artificial. Magnify. The hologram expanded. Several officers exchanged nervous glances. Ward studied the signal. Something about it felt deliberate. Calculated. Not a malfunction. Not random interference. Someone had sent it. Someone wanted them to notice. Then the signal vanished again. The room fell silent. "Trace origin?" Ward asked. The sensor officer swallowed. "Negative." Ward stared at the empty display. The unknown was always more dangerous than a visible enemy. Visible enemies could be fought. Prepared for. Predicted. The unknown hid in darkness. And darkness was patient. Hours passed. The station settled into its artificial night cycle. Lights dimmed throughout residential sectors. Most of the population slept peacefully. They had no idea that hundreds of thousands of kilometers away, something was moving through the void. Then the proximity alarms exploded. Red warning lights flooded the command center. Every display flashed simultaneously. Officers jumped from their seats. "Contact." The sensor officer's voice cracked. "Multiple contacts." Ward rushed toward the tactical display. His blood turned cold. One by one, crimson markers began appearing across the hologram. 10. 50. 100. Then hundreds more. The markers kept multiplying. The room became deathly silent. Nobody spoke. Nobody breathed. Because everyone understood what they were seeing. This wasn't a scouting force. It wasn't a patrol. It wasn't even an invasion fleet. It was an armada. A massive wall of warships emerging from hyperspace directly above the system's outer boundary. The first estimates showed numbers that shouldn't have been possible. Thousands of vessels. All armed. All advancing. And all heading straight toward Kestrel Outpost 7. Commander Ward stared at the impossible display. Then another alert appeared. A communication request. Not from the fleet. From somewhere inside it. A single encrypted transmission. No identification. No explanation. Only 3 words appeared on the screen. We found you. And then, across the darkness of space, the alien fleet accelerated toward the station. We found you. The 3 words hung in the command center like a death sentence. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The flashing red alarms, the tactical displays, the distant hum of the station's reactors, everything seemed to fade behind those words. We found you. Not surrender. Not leave the system. Not even a declaration of war. Whoever was coming hadn't arrived to negotiate. They had arrived with a purpose. And somehow, they already knew exactly what they were looking for. Commander Elias Ward snapped back to reality. Raise shields. Full power. The command center erupted into motion. Officers rushed between stations. Warning sirens echoed through every corridor of Kestrel Outpost 7. Across residential sectors, sleeping families jolted awake. Children sat up in confusion. Miners and technicians abandoned their quarters and hurried toward emergency shelters. Outside the observation ports, distant stars suddenly vanished behind an advancing wall of metal. The alien armada. Thousands of warships. Growing larger every second. Ward stared at the tactical display. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. No fleet traveled this far into frontier space without a reason. Nobody committed this many ships to attack a mining station. It made no strategic sense. Unless... His thoughts were interrupted. Commander, a sensor officer shouted. Enemy weapon systems charging. The room froze. Ward's jaw tightened. They're opening fire already. No communication. No demands. A knot formed in Ward's stomach. This wasn't conquest. This wasn't intimidation. This was extermination. The first enemy salvo launched. Thousands of bright streaks burst from the approaching fleet. Missiles. Railgun rounds. Energy lances. The darkness between the station and the armada became a storm of destruction. Impact in 10 seconds. 9. 8. 7. Every person in the command center watched the countdown. 6. 5. 4. 3. 2. 1. The station shook violently. The impact felt like a giant hand crushing the structure. Lights exploded overhead. Several officers were thrown from their stations. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut throughout the facility. Warning messages flooded every screen. Hull breach. Sector 12 destroyed. Casualty report incoming. The first attack alone had killed hundreds. Ward forced himself to focus. Damage report. Before anyone could answer, another barrage struck. The floor lurched beneath them. A distant explosion echoed through the station's superstructure. Somewhere, people were dying. Ward knew it. He could feel it. Meanwhile, chaos spread throughout Kestrel. Families ran through smoke-filled corridors. Parents carried frightened children toward shelters. Medical teams rushed toward damaged sectors. The station's internal cameras displayed scenes that looked more like a nightmare than reality. One feed showed a classroom evacuation. Another showed engineers desperately sealing a hull breach before vacuum claimed an entire section. Then one screen suddenly went black. Then another. And another. Entire sectors were disappearing. The attackers weren't targeting military installations. They were targeting population centers. Ward felt anger rising beneath the fear. Cold. Controlled. Dangerous anger. They know where civilians are, he said quietly. The command center fell silent. Because everyone realized he was right. This wasn't random bombardment. The enemy had detailed station schematics. They knew exactly where families lived. Exactly where shelters were located. Exactly where to inflict the most pain. Then a horrifying realization struck him. Someone had given them that information. Someone had betrayed Kestrel. Before he could voice the thought, a new alert appeared. Long-range communications array, critical damage. The station's connection to human space was failing. Fast. Commander, the communications officer said nervously. If we want to send a message, we have minutes at most. Ward looked around the room. At the frightened faces. At the dying station. At the enemy fleet steadily closing the distance. Human reinforcements were weeks away. There would be no rescue. No miraculous last stand. Only one choice remained. Slowly, Ward stepped toward the command console. His fingers hovered over a heavily restricted command authorization. One that had never been used. One that most people believed existed only in theory. The officer beside him stared. Sir, are you certain? Ward looked toward the tactical display, where thousands of hostile ships advanced through the darkness. Then he remembered the children. The families. The civilians being slaughtered outside these walls. His expression hardened. Yes. He entered the code. Immediately, the system accepted it. Across the command center, every screen went black. Then a single line of text appeared. Black Horizon Protocol activated. And somewhere far beyond the stars, a response signal began racing toward Earth. The signal left Kestrel Outpost 7 less than 3 minutes before the station's communications array was destroyed. 3 minutes. That was all Commander Elias Ward managed to buy. 3 minutes that would alter the fate of an entire civilization. And somewhere deep inside the burning station, as explosions tore through its outer hull, Ward didn't know if the message would ever arrive. But it did. Earth was beautiful that morning. Sunlight reflected across vast oceans. Orbital elevators stretched from continents into the sky like silver threads connecting worlds. Billions of people began another ordinary day. Commuters filled transit hubs. Children walked into schools. Merchants opened their businesses. For most of humanity, peace had become normal. War belonged to history books. Then every screen on Earth went dark. At first, people thought it was a technical malfunction. Phones froze. Advertisements vanished. News broadcasts abruptly stopped. Even private networks disconnected. Across the planet, billions looked up in confusion. Then a single symbol appeared. A black horizon stretching beneath a crimson star. The emblem hadn't been displayed publicly for over a century. Most citizens didn't recognize it. But military veterans did. Government officials did. And the few historians who studied classified conflicts felt their blood run cold. Because there was only one reason humanity would ever display that symbol. Something terrible had happened. Beneath Antarctica's frozen surface, nearly 2 miles below the ice, massive blast doors began to move. The sound echoed through chambers untouched for decades. Dust drifted from ceilings. Ancient machinery awakened. Lights flickered on one section at a time. Corridors that had slept in darkness for 60 years suddenly glowed bright white. Automated systems came online. Security protocols activated. Hidden elevators descended toward levels that officially did not exist. A calm synthetic voice echoed throughout the facility. Black Horizon authorization confirmed. Priority status, extinction level retaliation. Personnel across the underground complex froze. Even among the highest-ranking military officials, few had ever heard those words spoken aloud. Thousands of kilometers away, inside humanity's strategic command center, silence dominated the room. The final recording from Kestrel Outpost 7 played across a massive holographic display. No one interrupted. No one looked away. The footage showed children running through smoke-filled corridors. Medical teams carrying wounded civilians. Families desperately trying to reach evacuation shelters. Then came the bombardment. Sector after sector vanished in flashes of fire. Entire residential districts disappeared. The room remained silent. The silence somehow felt worse than anger. At the center of the chamber stood Grand Admiral Naomi Reyes. Unlike the others, she showed no visible emotion. Her eyes remained fixed on the footage. Watching. Remembering. Calculating. The recording reached its end. Commander Ward appeared on screen. Blood stained one side of his uniform. Warning sirens screamed in the background. The station trembled violently around him. For a moment, he simply stared into the camera. Then he spoke. To whoever receives this. Another explosion rocked the room behind him. We were not attacked for territory. We were not attacked for resources. A distant scream echoed through the recording. Ward's voice hardened. They came here to kill civilians. The image flickered. Static crawled across the screen. Then came his final words. Do what you must. The transmission ended. The room fell silent once more. For nearly 30 seconds, nobody spoke. Then one intelligence officer cleared his throat. Admiral. Reyes raised a hand. He stopped immediately. The Admiral continued staring at the dark screen. Finally, she turned toward the command staff. What do we know about the attackers? A holographic image appeared. An alien species with obsidian-colored skin and glowing amber eyes. The Varkesh Dominion. A rapidly expanding military empire. Aggressive. Ambitious. Dangerously arrogant. They've already begun broadcasting celebrations, an analyst said quietly. The room stiffened. Celebrations? Reyes asked. The analyst nodded. They believe the station has already fallen. Another screen activated. Images flooded the room. Crowds cheering. Military parades. Political leaders giving victory speeches. They weren't denying the attack. They were proud of it. That was when the mood inside the chamber changed. Not dramatically. Not visibly. But everyone felt it. Something crossed an invisible line. Something final. Reyes looked toward the largest display in the room. A classified screen hidden behind multiple security layers. For decades, it had remained locked. Unused. Forbidden. Now, it slowly illuminated. A single status notification appeared. Project Helios, standby mode complete. And for the first time in 60 years, humanity's most terrifying secret began to wake up. For 60 years, Project Helios had existed only as a rumor. A ghost hidden inside classified archives. A whispered myth among admirals. A nightmare buried so deeply that even most world leaders believed it had been dismantled long ago. Humanity had wanted it forgotten. Humanity had needed it forgotten. Because some inventions were too dangerous to remember. And now, for the first time in decades, Helios was waking up. 300 meters beneath Antarctica's ice, an elevator descended into darkness. Grand Admiral Naomi Reyes stood alone inside. The elevator moved silently. No music. No announcements. Just a steady descent into a place few humans had ever seen. As the seconds passed, the temperature seemed to drop. The walls became thicker. The security systems more elaborate. Layer after layer of safeguards surrounded whatever lay below. Finally, the elevator stopped. The doors opened. Reyes stepped into a chamber so enormous it resembled an underground city. Rows of towering servers stretched beyond sight. Quantum processors glowed behind transparent shielding. Gigantic holographic displays floated above the facility like suspended stars. Thousands of technicians worked quietly. No one spoke above a whisper. The atmosphere felt less like a military installation and more like a cathedral. A cathedral built around something humanity feared. At the center stood an elderly woman. Dr. Lina Ishikawa. The architect of Project Helios. 82 years old. Silver-haired. Sharp-eyed. And one of the most dangerous minds in human history. She watched Reyes approach. For several moments neither spoke. Finally, Ishikawa broke the silence. So. Her voice echoed softly through the chamber. It happened. Reyes nodded. Kestrel is gone. The scientist closed her eyes. Not in surprise. Not in disbelief. Almost as if she had always known this day would come. The protocol. Activated. The old woman sighed heavily. The sound carried decades of regret. Then humanity has failed. Across the galaxy, the Varkesh Dominion celebrated. Their capital world blazed with lights. Massive cities stretched across continents. Victory parades filled the streets. Citizens waved banners bearing the Dominion crest. The attack on Kestrel Outpost had become a symbol of their growing power. At the center of the celebration stood Fleet Marshal Zarthok. The architect of the attack. The hero of the hour. Crowds chanted his name. Politicians praised his courage. News networks replayed footage of the burning human station over and over again. Each broadcast earned louder cheers. The Dominion believed humanity would retreat. Perhaps protest. Maybe impose sanctions. Nothing more. After all, humans were civilized. Predictable. Soft. At least that was what everyone believed. Back on Earth, Ishikawa guided Reyes through Helios Command. Massive displays lit the darkness around them. Ancient schematics rotated above the floor. Complex equations scrolled endlessly across suspended screens. Reyes studied them. Most made little sense. How many are still operational, she asked. Ishikawa hesitated. All of them. Reyes stopped walking. All. The scientist nodded. Humanity never dismantled Helios. A chill crawled down the Admiral's spine. She had suspected as much. Still, hearing it confirmed felt different. More real. More terrifying. How many platforms? The answer came quietly. 912. Reyes stared. Her pulse quickened. 912. Enough firepower to alter entire star systems. Enough to erase civilizations. Enough to make every fleet in the galaxy irrelevant. No wonder Helios had been buried. No wonder humanity had hidden it. Some weapons ended wars. Others ended history. Suddenly, alarms echoed through the facility. Technicians looked up. Several displays changed simultaneously. A new stream of data flooded the central screen. One operator stood. His face had turned pale. Doctor. Ishikawa turned. What is it? The operator swallowed. His hands visibly trembled. We've received new intelligence from the Dominion. The footage appeared. Victory celebrations. Crowds cheering. Military officers laughing. Children playing beneath fireworks. Entire cities celebrating the destruction of Kestrel. Then the feed zoomed toward the central government district. Toward the Dominion High Council. Toward the leaders responsible. One politician raised a glass. The room listened as he spoke. His words were translated automatically. The humans have learned their place. Laughter erupted around him. The recording ended. Silence followed. A terrible silence. The kind that arrives before disasters. Before storms. Before worlds die. Then another alert appeared. Not from intelligence. Not from military command. From Helios itself. Across every screen in the chamber, a single notification flashed. Target analysis complete. Primary system identified. Awaiting final authorization. And somewhere, many light-years away, the star above the Varkesh homeworld began behaving in ways its scientists could not yet explain. The first scientist who noticed the anomaly almost ignored it. That decision nearly cost the Varkesh Dominion its final chance to understand what was happening. Almost. High above the Dominion homeworld, inside the prestigious Stellar Research Nexus, Chief Astrophysicist Vectoron stared at a stream of incoming data. At first glance, everything appeared normal. The system's star, Varker Prime, burned exactly as it always had. A stable yellow giant. Nearly 6 billion years old. The heart of an empire that ruled hundreds of worlds. But then he noticed a discrepancy. Tiny. Almost invisible. A fluctuation in the star's core energy output. Less than 1%. Insignificant by most standards. Yet something about it bothered him. Stars did not change behavior without reason. Especially not this quickly. Vectoron ordered another scan. Then another. And another. Each result made his pulse quicken. The fluctuation was growing. Meanwhile, across the planet below, nobody noticed. Why would they? The Dominion was celebrating. Massive victory banners stretched between skyscrapers. Fireworks exploded above glittering cities. Crowds filled the streets. News networks praised Fleet Marshal Zarthok as the hero who had humbled humanity. The atmosphere felt festive. Triumphant. Victorious. No one looked up. No one paid attention to the sun. No one saw the first signs. On Earth, thousands of light-years away, Project Helios entered its final phase. The underground command center buzzed with quiet efficiency. Nobody cheered. Nobody smiled. The atmosphere felt like a funeral. Grand Admiral Naomi Reyes stood before the central display. Above her floated a holographic image of the Varkesh system. Their homeworld. Their colonies. Their orbital infrastructure. Everything. Dr. Lina Ishikawa joined her. The scientist looked exhausted. Older than she had only hours earlier. Last chance, Ishikawa said quietly. Reyes didn't answer immediately. Her eyes remained fixed on the display. Millions of civilians lived on that world. Families. Workers. Children. People who had never heard of Kestrel Station. People who had played no role in its destruction. The reality weighed heavily on everyone present. But another reality weighed even heavier. If a civilization could slaughter civilians without consequence, it would happen again. And again. And again. Until nobody was safe. Finally, Reyes spoke. Proceed. The room fell silent. An operator entered the authorization sequence. The command echoed through Helios Command. Phase 7 initiated. For 60 years, humanity's greatest weapon had slept. Now it awakened fully. Deep in interstellar space, hidden far beyond the borders of known maps, ancient structures stirred. Machines concealed inside rogue planets activated. Forgotten platforms orbiting dead stars came online. 912 installations. Scattered across the galaxy. Connected through quantum entanglement. Invisible to every known sensor network. Humanity's final deterrent. The weapon humanity prayed would never be needed. One by one, they synchronized. A silent chain reaction spanning thousands of light-years. The energy readings were impossible. The calculations incomprehensible. Even many Helios engineers didn't fully understand the system anymore. They simply knew what it could do. And that terrified them. Back in the Varkesh home system, Vectoron stared at his newest scan. His blood ran cold. The fluctuation wasn't growing naturally. It was accelerating. Rapidly. Violently. The star's internal structure was changing. As if an invisible hand had reached into its core. His breathing quickened. He opened emergency channels. Contacted government officials. Military command. Anyone who would listen. Most dismissed him. Some laughed. Others accused him of ruining the celebrations. Until he transmitted the raw data. Then the laughter stopped. Minutes later, Fleet Marshal Zarthok was pulled from a victory ceremony. Annoyed and irritated, he entered a secure conference chamber. Scientists filled the room. Several looked terrified. Vectoron stepped forward. Without speaking, he projected the latest stellar analysis. The room watched. Nobody understood what they were seeing. Except the scientists. And they looked horrified. Zarthok frowned. What does this mean? No one answered immediately. Finally, Vectoron forced the words out. The star is dying. The room exploded with confusion. Arguments erupted instantly. Impossible. Absurd. Stars didn't die in hours. They died over millions of years. But Vectoron wasn't finished. His hands trembled as he displayed the final projection. Silence consumed the chamber. Every face turned pale. Because now everyone understood. The star wasn't dying. It was being killed. And according to the calculations, the Varkesh homeworld had exactly 12 minutes left. 12 minutes. At first, nobody in the chamber spoke. The number seemed too small. Too absurd. Too impossible. Fleet Marshal Zarthok stared at the projection floating above the conference table, waiting for someone to laugh. Waiting for someone to explain the mistake. Waiting for reality to return. It never did. The countdown continued. 11 minutes, 43 seconds. The star's core instability was accelerating. Every calculation confirmed the same horrifying truth. There was no error. No malfunction. No natural explanation. Something had reached across thousands of light-years and turned their sun into a weapon. And whoever had done it possessed power beyond anything the Dominion had imagined. The panic began quietly. A few emergency calls. A few frantic messages. A few nervous officials abandoning celebrations. Then the truth leaked. And civilization began to crack. Across the capital city, millions of citizens received emergency alerts simultaneously. Every screen flashed crimson. Public transportation stopped. Financial markets collapsed. Air traffic was grounded. Orbital ports locked down. At first, people thought it was a terrorist attack. Then they saw the sky. Varker Prime looked different. Only slightly. But enough. The familiar golden sun now carried a faint white glow around its edges. An unnatural brightness. A warning sign visible even to the naked eye. People began pointing. Asking questions. Then they started running. Within minutes, the streets became rivers of fear. Families abandoned homes. Vehicles clogged highways. Emergency shelters overflowed. The government attempted to maintain order. It failed. Nobody wanted instructions. Nobody wanted reassurance. They wanted escape. And there wasn't enough room. There never could be. Not for billions. Inside Dominion High Command, chaos erupted. Military officers shouted over one another. Fleet commanders demanded answers. Politicians demanded solutions. Scientists demanded evacuation authority. Nobody possessed either. Because there was no solution. And nowhere safe to evacuate. Even if every ship in the Dominion launched immediately, less than 1% of the population could escape before the deadline. The realization hit like a physical blow. This wasn't a disaster. This was extinction. Zarthok stood motionless at the center of the room. For the first time in decades, he felt fear. Real fear. Not battlefield fear. Not political fear. Existential fear. The kind that stripped away pride. The kind that revealed uncomfortable truths. His thoughts drifted back to Kestrel Outpost 7. To the civilians. To the families. To the children. He remembered approving the targeting package personally. At the time, it had seemed efficient. Human morale would collapse faster if civilian casualties were high. Simple strategy. Nothing personal. Now, staring at the countdown clock, he suddenly wondered how many parents had watched their children die aboard that station. The thought wouldn't leave him. A communications officer rushed forward. "Marshal." Zarthok looked up. "We've established a priority channel with humanity." Hope flickered through the room. A desperate, fragile hope. Perhaps there was still time. Perhaps this was leverage. A warning. A demonstration. Something reversible. Anything. The connection opened. A human face appeared. Grand Admiral Naomi Reyes. Calm. Silent. Watching. The room erupted with demands. Scientists pleaded. Politicians begged. Military leaders offered surrender. Entire star systems. Entire fleets. Anything. Everything. Just stop it. Reyes listened. Expressionless. When the noise finally died, she spoke. Only once. The people of Kestrel asked for mercy too. Silence. Then the transmission ended. Across the Dominion homeworld, the countdown reached 5 minutes. The sky grew brighter. Far brighter. People stopped running. Stopped shouting. Stopped hoping. They simply stared upward. Because now everyone could see it. The sun was changing. Its light becoming painfully white. Its surface writhing with impossible storms. The heavens themselves appeared angry. As though a god had awakened. In the stellar research nexus, Vectoron watched the final calculations complete. His hands shook uncontrollably. The projection updated. The last prediction. The final certainty. No more theories. No more probabilities. Only fact. He looked around the room. At his colleagues. At the civilization he loved. At everything they would soon lose. Then he whispered the words nobody wanted to hear. It started. Far above the world, the surface of Varker Prime cracked open. And a wall of stellar fire began racing outward into the darkness. The first wave did not look like fire. Not at first. From orbit, it appeared almost beautiful. A ripple of white gold light spreading across the surface of Varker Prime's sun, like ink dissolving into water. But beauty lasted only seconds. Then physics broke. The stars screamed into instability. Flares erupted from its surface in impossible geometries, jets of energy bending in ways no natural process allowed. Entire regions of the corona collapsed inward, then detonated outward again, as if something was rewriting the rules of fusion in real time. On every screen across the Dominion, scientists tried to explain it. They failed. Because there was nothing in their knowledge that matched what they were witnessing. It was not a supernova. Not a collapse. Not a known stellar event. It was execution. 5 minutes became 4. 4 became 3. Panic stopped being organized. It became instinct. On the surface of the homeworld, billions finally understood that no government could save them. No fleet could intervene. No bunker could protect them from a dying sun. The sky itself had become the weapon. People fell to their knees in the streets. Others screamed at the heavens. Some simply sat in silence, holding their families as if closeness could change the laws of physics. It could not. In orbit, evacuation ships fought for launch clearance. They collided in docking corridors. Some exploded before even leaving atmosphere. Others broke formation and fled randomly into space, not toward safety, just away. Admiral fleets tried to organize order. They failed within seconds. There was no chain of command left. Only survival. Only chaos. Only time running out. Inside Dominion High Command, Zarthok stood frozen. The room around him had become unrecognizable. Screens flickered with evacuation failures. Live feeds showed cities dissolving into panic. But none of it mattered anymore. Because outside the panoramic window, Barker Prime's sun was now visibly wrong. Too bright. Too sharp. Too alive. He finally understood what humanity had done. They had not attacked the Dominion. They had not invaded. They had not fought fleets or armies or defenses. They had reached into the heart of reality itself and reprogrammed a star. And there had been no warning. No negotiation. No second chance. Only consequence. 2 minutes. The atmosphere began to glow. Ionized particles filled the sky. Lightning struck upward from the clouds, drawn toward the collapsing magnetic fields above. Cities disappeared beneath expanding waves of heat. Oceans began to boil from above, not below. People stopped screaming. Their voices simply could not carry anymore. In the stellar research nexus, Vectoron remained at his station. He had stopped trying to stop it. He had stopped reporting. He had stopped breathing normally. Instead, he watched. Because understanding had become the only thing left. He realized something no one else had yet accepted. This was not revenge in anger. This was retaliation executed with precision. Measured. Controlled. Deliberate. Human. 1 minute. Fleet Marshal Zarthok finally moved. He activated the emergency evacuation beacon. Not for himself. For anyone who could still escape. It was useless. But it was instinct. A gesture of command when command meant nothing. The sky outside the command chamber turned pure white. The star was no longer visible. Only light remained. 30 seconds. The Dominion homeworld stopped being a world. It became a silhouette inside a furnace. Continents vanished beneath radiant energy. Atmosphere peeled away layer by layer. The planet's surface cracked like glass under unbearable heat. And then... silence. Not soundless silence. Existence silence. As if the universe itself blinked. Back on Earth, deep beneath Antarctica, Admiral Reyes watched the final telemetry arrive. 912 Helios platforms reported completion. One by one, they powered down. Not destroyed. Not lost. Just, waiting. Dr. Ishikawa spoke softly behind her. It's done. Reyes nodded once. On the display, the Varkesh system stabilized. What remained of the star drifted into a quiet, controlled decay. A dead empire orbiting the ashes of its own sun. Reyes turned away. And said nothing. Because there was nothing left to say. For a long time, there was only silence. Not the silence of space. Not the silence of distance. But the silence that follows something so enormous that language no longer feels adequate to describe it. The Varkesh Dominion had existed for centuries. It had conquered worlds, absorbed cultures, and expanded across hundreds of star systems. It had believed itself strong. Inevitable. Untouchable. Now, in the aftermath of a single coordinated response, it was none of those things. It was gone. In the command chamber beneath Antarctica, the first reports continued arriving. Long-range probes confirmed it. The Varkesh Homeworld system had collapsed into a stabilized stellar remnant. Orbital infrastructure, gone. Colonies, silent. Fleet presence, erased. Not a single organized military signal remained. Grand Admiral Naomi Reyes stood before the display, unmoving. Behind her, technicians spoke in low voices. Some were checking casualty projections. Others were verifying Helios platform status. No one celebrated. No one smiled. Because even victory had a weight when measured in extinction. Dr. Lina Ishikawa approached slowly. Her voice was tired. It worked exactly as designed. Reyes didn't look at her. That's what I'm afraid of. Across human space, the reaction was not uniform. Some systems reacted with relief. Others with disbelief. Many with fear. Because for the first time in over a century, humanity had reminded the galaxy of something it had tried very hard to forget. Humanity was not defenseless. It was restrained. And restraint had limits. A classified broadcast was prepared. It was transmitted to every known interstellar government simultaneously. No encryption barriers. No diplomatic filters. Only raw footage. Kestrel Outpost 7. The burning corridors. The civilian shelters collapsing under fire. Commander Elias Ward's final transmission. The children running through smoke. The silence that followed. Then the Dominion celebration footage. The laughter. The victory speeches. The pride. The arrogance. And finally. The result. A dead world circling a dying star. No narration. No threats. No demands. Only evidence. And consequence. In the days that followed, entire civilizations studied the transmission. Not with outrage. Not with justification. But with fear that grew quieter the longer it was observed. Because one truth became impossible to ignore. Humanity had not acted impulsively. It had not reacted blindly. It had calculated. It had waited. It had endured loss. And only then, after all diplomatic channels were gone, after civilians had been slaughtered without warning, it responded with something far more terrifying than rage. Clarity. Far from the core worlds, Fleet Marshal Zarthok's final recorded message was recovered from debris drifting in the collapsed Dominion system. It contained only one line. A voice stripped of pride. Of command. Of certainty. We thought they were weak. The message ended there. Back on Earth, life continued. Cities remained bright. Ships continued trading between stars. Children still went to school. But something fundamental had changed in the galaxy's understanding of humanity. No longer were humans seen as simply diplomatic. Or patient. Or advanced. Now they were seen as something else entirely. A species that could endure atrocity without immediate retaliation. And still decide, with full understanding and certainty, to end an empire when the line was crossed. In the deepest chamber of Project Helios, Dr. Ishikawa reviewed the final system logs. Everything was stable. Everything was dormant again. She turned to Admiral Reyes. What now? Reyes looked at the silent displays for a long moment. Then she answered quietly. Now they learn. A pause. Not to fear us. Her eyes hardened slightly. But to understand us. She turned away. And behind her, across the galaxy, a single lesson echoed through every surviving government. Not spoken. Not written. But understood. Humanity does not start wars. But it ends them.